Hi everyone, welcome to this session on linguistics, how language works. My name is Susie McQueen and I'm the convener of the linguistics program here at the Australian National University. We'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners, Ngunnawal and Ngambri, and their custodianship of the lands on which the Australian National University operates. This custodianship has never been ceded. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and to global society. So with me today, I have three of our linguistics staff members, and we're all ready to answer your questions on Q&A throughout the session. So if you can see at the bottom of your screen, the Q&A function, please feel free to pop in questions there. So we have with us Professor Nick Evans and Dr. Jennifer Hendricks and Associate Professor Shun Ishihara. So as I said, please feel free to ask us questions using the Q&A function while you listen to the joys of linguistics at ANU. And for your information, this session is being recorded, so you're free to listen again later if there's something that you didn't understand.
Welcome to this information session on linguistics at the Australian National University. What is linguistics? Linguistics is often referred to as the scientific study of language. When you study linguistics, you are studying one of the most fundamental aspects of being human, how we communicate. Linguists study how languages work through analysing the elements of language, such as their sounds, their meanings, and their grammar. Understanding these workings of language gives us a window on the human mind, because humans have developed an astonishingly vast array of ways to represent worlds through their languages. Linguists also study how language works, through exploring how language is used to do things in the world. For example, the interactions of pilots and air traffic controllers bringing a plane into land, or a parent using language to draw their young child's attention to a ball, a teacher of a second language facilitating a role play, and many other aspects of how we show belonging or how language patterns work across whole societies. If you've ever wondered why a joke is funny, how an expression started, what is different about an accent, or exactly what is meant by a word, then you are already thinking like a linguist. Linguistics is relevant to many different areas of work, such as education, technology, health, law, and public service, among many others. At ANU, you can complement your study of linguistics by learning one or more of our wide range of languages on offer. We are fortunate to have three key centres at ANU. The ARC Centre of Excellence for the Dynamics of Language investigates how languages vary, how we learn them, how we process them, and how they evolve. The Institute for Communication in Healthcare researches healthcare communication to achieve the goal of safe and compassionate healthcare. The Australian National Dictionary Centre carries out research in Australian English and edits the Australian National Dictionary. We have a wide range of courses on offer, which are part of many undergraduate and postgraduate programs. These include the Bachelor of Arts, the Bachelor of Asian Studies, the Bachelor of Languages, the Bachelor of International Relations, the Master of General and Applied Linguistics, and the Master of Translation, among others. Let us now hear a little about the work and the teaching of linguists and applied linguists at ANU.
I'm Catherine Travis, and I'm a linguist at the ANU. The area that I work in is sociolinguistics, which is the study of language in its social context. Some of the questions that we ask as sociolinguistics is how the way people speak is influenced by their social background, how ways of speaking can be used to project different identities, and how different ways of speaking are perceived and interpreted. We're currently exploring some of these questions for Australian English in a project being run at the ANU through the Centre of Excellence for the Dynamics of Language. This project, called Sydney Speaks, is examining variation and change in English spoken in Sydney over some 100 years, with recordings from speakers that were born as early as the 1890s to some who were born as recently as the 1990s. And we're looking at changes that have undergone over this time in English, taking into account the large change that's also been undergone in Sydney's ethnic diversity. As part of this project, we've developed a couple of interactive tools to test your perception of Australian English. And these involve listening to clips from some of the speakers that we've recorded and trying to guess the region that they're from, their occupation, and their ethnicity. And you'll probably be surprised at how hard this is to do. So I invite you to work with these tools and test your perceptions and to come and explore these issues with us more here at the ANU.
Hello, I'm Ksenia Gnevsheva, and I'm a sociophonetician at the Australian National University. Sociophonetics studies social constraints on pronunciation, both from the point of view of speech production and speech perception. In my research, I focus on variation in foreign accentedness and approach it from three different perspectives. First, I study variation in speech production. That is how second language speakers of English, for example, vary in their accentedness depending on who they talk to and what the topic of conversation is, and how such variation reflects their identity as well as cognitive capacity for second language acquisition. Second, I'm interested in how foreign accented speakers are perceived and the social implications of having a foreign accent, including linguistic discrimination. Finally, my research finds an application in pronunciation pedagogy as we develop more efficient ways to teach a foreign language.
My name is Bethan Evans, and I'm a linguist working at the ANU. Have you ever thought about how the language you speak can be a window on the past? This idea is the foundation of historical linguistics, a subfield of linguistics that explores the histories of languages. As historical linguists, we investigate questions such as, how are the thousands of different languages spoken today connected with each other? And words are one piece of evidence to explore such connections. How and why do languages change over time? And why do some languages change much faster than others? A language's history is not just a history of the language itself, but it's also a history of the language's speakers. And so what can we learn from today's languages about human history and prehistory? My own research focuses on the indigenous languages of Bougainville in Papua New Guinea and the Western Solomon Islands, documenting and describing these languages, as well as using language to reconstruct aspects of the region's past. Looking at how the similarities and differences among these languages tell us about histories of migration and trade, and of past networks of social and cultural interaction. I teach 2 courses on historical linguistics. Language Across Time is a course that explores the ways in which languages change over time and the methods that historical linguists use to reconstruct language histories beyond the time depth of written records. Linguistic Histories in Asia and the Pacific is a cross-disciplinary course that explores the histories of languages and their speakers of the Asia-Pacific region. This is done through the lens of language, as well as through research from other disciplines such as anthropology, archaeology and paleoecology, history and population genetics.
I'm Josh Brown, and I'm a historical sociolinguist here at ANU. Historical sociolinguistics looks at language variation in the past. We study things like the history of particular languages, like the history of English or the history of Italian, and ask questions like, how do languages change over time? How do standard languages form? And even questions about the circulation of texts and scripts. Looking at language in the past often means using historical documents, whether they be old dictionaries, printed books, or even medieval manuscripts. Historical sociolinguistics is very relevant to the study of language today. By looking at how language varied in the past, we can get an idea about how language change happens in general and what this means for language change today. I'm particularly interested in forms of dialect contact in the past and how particular forms of language contact can lead to new types of languages, such as pidgins or Koine languages. Recent technological innovations, such as handwritten recognition technology, have helped language historians reveal whole continents of writing from the past that have been hidden from view, especially groups that have traditionally been ignored, and non-literary writing, such as religious writing, women's writing, and merchant texts. Studying non-standard forms of language has huge implications for more fundamental issues in society, like democracy, equality, and whose language enters into the mainstream discourse.
Hi, I'm Carmel O'Shaughnessy. One of the intriguing things about humans is that we communicate using languages. No other species does this, and young children learn them pretty well by about age 3 without anyone explicitly teaching them. How do they do this? In language acquisition, we look at this kind of question. In our courses, you can learn about Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages, some of the unique and really fascinating aspects of traditional languages, newer languages that have come about more recently, and how languages are changing over time. All languages are changing, either quickly or slowly, and sometimes an entirely new way of speaking emerges. We don't usually have the opportunity to observe a new language as it emerges, but in a couple of cases we have been able to. This observation allows us to investigate the social and grammatical mechanisms that allow a new way of speaking to come about. My research brings both of these areas together, language acquisition and the role of adults and children in language change and the emergence of new languages. What are the different ways that these different age groups contribute to change or something new? Or another way of asking is, who brings in something new? In our courses, we examine these questions from differing perspectives.
My name is Susie McQueen, and I'm an applied linguist at ANU. Applied linguistics explores how language operates in contexts such as education, healthcare, and in workplaces. Applied linguists aim to understand communication practices and, in some cases, to make communication better. We explore how certain ways of using language can make aspects of life more efficient, more effective, or even fairer. In my work, I collaborate with people in areas where communication is critical, such as doctors, nurses, and teachers. Applied linguists also try to understand how languages are learned. We ask questions such as, what's the best age to learn a second language? What are effective ways to teach languages? What's the fairest way to test someone's language proficiency? One of the courses I teach is called Second Language Acquisition. We know that the human capacity for language is amazing, and it's made even more extraordinary by the fact that our abilities don't stop at one language. In fact, we can master multiple communication systems. This course explores this unique human phenomenon.
Hello, my name is Shun Ishihara. I'm the convener of the Forensic Linguistics program and the leader of the forensic stream of the Speech and Language Lab. Forensic linguistics is a relatively new branch in linguistics or forensic science. It is the application of linguistic knowledge and skills to any issues relating to language in the law, including the analysis of linguistic materials, for example, recorded speech and text messages as forensic evidence. I would like you to get a taste for forensic text comparison here a bit, in which typically you need to compare a set of texts written by an offender and another set written by a suspect in answer to a question, were they written by the same person or different people. So what are you looking at here are chat log communication. And the first one is a chat log between A and X, and second one between B and Y. So are A and B the same person or not? In fact, it is fairly easy to tell that the A and B are different people in this particular case. Their writing styles are clearly different, and the differences are consistent for each of them. For example, the messages are entirely written in lowercase characters by B, but both upper and lower cases are used in the text written by A.
Jane Simpson, and I'm a descriptive linguist. This makes me rather like a general practitioner. I work on every aspect of language, from the sounds to making dictionaries, to writing grammars, to describing how people use language for different purposes. The languages I describe are mostly Australian Aboriginal languages, but I'm also fascinated by other languages, including English. In Australia, I've had the good fortune to work with speakers of languages that are still spoken, such as in Central Australia, Warlpiri and Warramungal. But I've also worked with learners of heritage languages, so languages that are only known from written records, such as Kaurna, the language of the Adelaide Plains. This includes writing guides to these languages. I'm part of a fabulous group of people here at ANU who also work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but not just on describing their languages, but also on trying to ensure that the language rights of these people are recognised. We've recently been involved in the National Indigenous Language Report, which gives a snapshot of the status of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages in Australia today. And we hope that this will lead to better language policy and better implementation of policy. So, how does one get to be a descriptive linguist? For me, it was largely the really inspiring field methods classes that I took when I was an undergraduate student. In field methods, we work with a native speaker of a small language, such as most languages of the Pacific. We figure out the sound, grammar, and words of their language, and also a bit about how the language is used in the community. As a teacher, I've really enjoyed learning alongside my students. It brings in all sorts of knowledge from other fields. I'll end with an example of this. So one year we were studying Balinese, and Balinese has a respect language, which is a polite way of talking to and about people you think of as high status. One of our students was a Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka. As part of studying Buddhism, he'd studied Sanskrit, which is an archaic language from India. And he discovered that many words of the Balinese respect language were actually borrowings from Sanskrit. And how that came about had to do with the history of religion and trade between India and Bali.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nick Evans. I teach linguistics here, and I've spent many years of my life working on Indigenous languages of Northern Australia, so Aboriginal languages like Kayardild and Dalalbon, and on languages of Southern New Guinea, like Nen. What I love most about linguistics is it's a kind of existential decoding. You get a chance to see what it's like to enter another life, enter another culture, think about the world in another way, which is about the deepest sense of discovery that you can have. And you learn that by being with people who are often remarkable, unsung individuals. They have the most incredible deep knowledge. They're usually very keen to share it with you. And not just the language, that's part of it, but the language reaches out into all corners of life. It's a very, it's an experience where you just have to go back to basics, almost to being a baby again. You realize you're very ignorant. So it's humbling in that way. You have to be prepared to be laughed at a lot because you make a fool of yourself. But in return for that, you truly do get to see and think about the world in a different way. This was my first field experience when I began my PhD in 1982, and I was welcomed into the Kayardild community especially by these two people you see here, Darwin Murinathi and his wife May Murinathi, who welcomed me as a son. They'd never had kids themselves. And I started a new life with them as second parents, and they taught me so much. It's a truly fascinating and unusual language. I won't talk about that now, but you can learn about it later on. But I was very lucky both to have people who were so open-hearted and to have a language that everywhere you looked, there was something new to discover, and you thought, no, a human language couldn't be like this. Later on, I started fieldwork in Papua New Guinea. This was my second year working in the village of Bimarban on Nen. And I gave you this just to show you something about commitment to working in a language. So we began with making a dictionary. This was a language spoken in just one village by about 350 people. It had never been written down. There was nothing on the language at all. And we started making a dictionary, which we're still working on. And at the end of the first year, they said, well, we want to keep a record of all of these words. Every year we'll count up how many words you've got in the dictionary. And we will write that number. And they went off to the forest and cut down this giant old tree. And that is what's called the dictionary pole. And every year when we do our season of fieldwork, we count up how many words we've got from the year before and inscribe that number on the pole. This is to show how unexpected the journey of working on a language can be. We're back to Kayardild now, and this is Sally Gabori, who she's actually my tribal mother-in-law. When I first met her, I couldn't talk to her because she was my mother-in-law, but knew nothing about her talents. No one knew. She didn't know. Not until her late 70s did it turn out she was an amazing artist, and she has paintings hanging in New York, in Paris, all over the world. And one of her paintings was commissioned to be enlarged and put on the wall of the Queensland High Court. So part of the sort of side job you do, because you learn the language, you have good relations with people, was to translate the contract by which she gave permission for this to be blown up, because Sally effectively only speaks Kayardild. So that was what this was about, just negotiating the contract. Fantastic. And the last picture here, working on these amazing languages. Sadly, the languages are often not being learned by children, and part of our job is to help people should they want to get their language back on the road. And this is my Dalalbon teacher and close friend, manual pump car with his car, which at the time wasn't running, but he has Dalabong, the language name, as his license plate. And while we were waiting for the motor mechanic to turn up and jumpstart the car, we thought we would make this photo of jumpstarting Dalabong. And since we took this photo 2 years ago, we've made a whole lot of Dalabong videos which are up on YouTube, and just surf Dalabong YouTube channel and you can see some of them. So those 4 photos I showed you, which are just snapshots from many things in the life of a linguist, give you some idea both of the scientific side, making discoveries in whole linguistic worlds that are unknown, and well, they're known to the speakers, but they're not known outside the speech community. So that scientific side of discovery, huge. I mean, there's so much, even in one language, to find out. And on the other, the engaged citizen side of working with people in those speech communities for all sorts of goals. They might be connected with language, they might be connected with art, with music, with obtaining legal recognition of native title. I hope you'll want to study linguistics. I hadn't ever heard of it until too late in life, but it leads to so many directions and engages so many parts of you as a human being. That's what I love about it.
So I hope that you've learnt something about the nature of studying linguistics, and that you feel inclined to join us here at the Australian National University. While you're thinking of questions that you might like to pop up to ask us, I'd say that one of the things that I love about linguistics is its incredible breadth. As Nick was just saying, it really covers a huge range from a scientific, theoretical, descriptive end, right through to language in practical and educational circumstances. And we're really lucky here at ANU. We have pretty much all the corners of linguistics represented, so you're not going to miss anything. And if you're really not quite sure what you want to study at uni, linguistics is an area that really has relevance to pretty much everything. So there's no way it can be a waste of time. So I highly recommend it, even if you are not absolutely sure of the career path that you want to take. There isn't, in answer to the question from Felicity, is there a Bachelor of Linguistics, or is it only offered as electives on another course? There isn't a Bachelor of Linguistics, but there is a major in linguistics, and there is a minor in applied linguistics. And we also have a master degree, which specialises in linguistics. Charlotte asks, is the Master of General and Applied Linguistics available in a vertical double? Yes, it is. And it makes a very nice partner with lots of different undergraduate specialisations. For example, the Bachelor of Languages, the Bachelor of Asian Studies, also other areas such as psychology. Very nice partners with the study of linguistics. We have a question about forensic linguistics. Shun, can I pass that to you?
Yeah, that's fine. One of the obvious actually practical application of forensic linguistics is how to use or how to analyze the linguistic evidence in order to in court as an evidence, basically just whether actually a suspect is guilty or not. That's sort of a typical situation, but not only that, during the investigation, because the speech or what you write, text messages, all of those things have a lot of information beside linguistic information, which are used for communication. So during the investigation, you can use the, all the information besides linguistic information can be used for, investigation purposes. That's maybe another practical skills.
We have a question about a major in English and whether it would complement a major in linguistics. I think it would. Jennifer, what do you think? You need to unmute.
Sorry, I think it would be a fantastic complement to study both English and linguistics, and a lot of students here do that. The questions are coming in fast and furiously. Can I answer one, Susie? Or?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Felicity has another question about the possibility of doing a double major, I'm assuming in linguistics, or a major minor, or is it capped at just a major? Well, we do offer quite a few courses, but if you're that keen on doing linguistics, you could also just think about doing honors in linguistics, which would be a great way to go. You sort of steep yourself in linguistics for almost 4 years, and that would be a great way to go. So I hope that answers that question. We still have one that's outstanding, maybe for, oh, okay. The double vertical degree?
Yes, the double vertical is possible. I think I might have answered that, but yes, sorry. We definitely have the Master of General and Applied Linguistics available in the vertical double. Nick, would you like to answer Evelyn's question?
Which question?
Right,
is this?
if you scroll to the bottom of Q&A.
Yeah, somehow I got out of that. It's not Felicity. I've got Felicity's one. Oh, open. Sorry. No. Okay.
So Evelyn says,
hi.
Yep.
I'm interested in describing language in order to revitalise Indigenous languages. I'd like to know more what ANU offers as postgraduate programs. So it depends what you've got already, Evelyn, like whether you've already got some linguistics background. We're very aware that a lot of people don't think of linguistics until later on. So that's what the coursework masters is there for in part, if you haven't done linguistics before. But if you've already done some, we've got a very lively, outstanding PhD program, and lots of our PhD students are working on one or another aspect of Indigenous languages. So there's lots there. It really just depends on what level you're coming in, and if you want to tell us that, we can give you more targeted advice. In terms of specific courses, we've got 2 Indigenous languages that are taught here, so Gamilaroi and Biningunwa. We've got a course on Australian Indigenous languages, and then we've got courses on Austronesian languages and Papuan languages. And we also have a linguistic field methods course that Jane Simpson mentioned in hers, which we all sit down with a language none of us knows, neither the lecturer nor the students, and try and work out about as much of it as we can in the time. And that's really great preparation for whatever language you're going to go and work on. So the language we choose varies from year to year, but that's always an interesting part of it. So I think you'd find there's lots of preparation, and as well as that, the number of examples drawn from Indigenous languages just in other courses such as language in society or phonetics or whatever is pretty high. So you'll just get it all the time. You heard from Carmel, you heard from Jane. I work on Indigenous languages. There's a lot of people around who do it. Okay, I've done applied linguistics in an undergraduate degree and a master's degree in intercultural bilingual education. Yeah, okay. So probably what you'd find is with those, there might be some sort of nuts and bolts subjects like phonetics and semantics and syntax and morphology that it would be good to pick up somehow. We'd just be very happy to talk to you and give you advice about the right sequence of things to put together.
I think in addition to that, the Master of General and Applied Linguistics does allow you to do those nuts and bolts courses. So it's a great program for putting the jigsaw together for things that you might need depending on your career goals.
Yeah.
So I think there's plenty of scope there, and also there's research programs such as the Masters by Research, and then of course PhD if you've got a thesis in your master degree. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up our questions. We'll just give a few seconds for anyone who has a last minute burning question about linguistics that they're desperate to ask. You've got 4 linguists here just champing at the bit to entice you into our wonderful world. But other than that, thanks very much everyone for coming along to our session. And if you have any further questions about linguistics.
Sorry, Susie, there are a couple more coming in.
Burning questions, okay. So, yep, I'm going to pop up an email address in a minute for you, Evelyn, so you can get in touch and we can talk further. The process to do honours in linguistics, how soon do we need to nominate a topic and find a supervisor? So, Felicity, that depends on which bit of the process you're in. But generally speaking, students start thinking about honours as throughout their majors, and then towards the end of any time in their undergraduate degree, really, they can start thinking about where they'd like to specialise. And usually students find this out through just tasting the various courses and getting to know staff. And gradually they work together with staff in order to develop their research interest and a possible thesis topic. So I guess this can happen at any point, but it happens towards the end, really, when you've had a chance to sample different courses. Finding a supervisor, well, we like to think that we're pretty open here, and you get to know staff, and we love to talk to people. You know, just email someone and they'll be happy to meet up with you and talk about the possibilities of honours topics. And then there's just an administrative process that follows that. I know Nick and Shun, you've supervised heaps and heaps of honours students. Maybe there's some other aspect of the process that you'd like to talk about.
Look, maybe I can say a couple more things about it. First of all, just before you even enrol, there are things you can do to get hooked into what's going on here, because you learn a lot outside courses, but through other sorts of activities. So we have a very lively seminar series, for example, mostly on Friday afternoons, and anyone can come along to that. At the moment, it's all on Zoom, and you can just register for that. Just email any one of us and we can add your name to the mailing list. And then CODAL, as Centre of Excellence for the Dynamics of Language, often organises other events, special workshops and things that people can just come along to. Before COVID, we would all meet for what we call Frinks on Friday afternoons. It was held just at the Fellows Bar at Uni House and move around. Hopefully we'll get back to that at some point, but that's just a great way of meeting people informally. and a lot of ideas for possible topics are born at discussions like that. And also, for example, the course I'm teaching this semester on semantic typology, we're having to do it remotely, but we like to meet people and talk to them. So we've just got a coffee hour before the course, and anyone who wants to can come along and talk there. So there's a lot of chances like that come up, or sometimes honest topics just grow out of an essay in a course. You're constrained by the couple of thousand words you're allowed to write, and you say, oh, this is so much more interesting, there's a lot more I'd like to say, and then that develops into something larger and more substantial. And then, as well as that, towards the end of every year, all the staff members put up proposals and say, look, here are some topics we'd really like to supervise. Anyone interested? That's not to say you mightn't have your own topic as well, but it's just to give you a sort of banquet of what's available to do. So there's lots and lots, and I think one of the nice things about linguistics is there is just so much still to discover. I've got a friend who was a theoretical physicist, had a PhD in theoretical physics, and he just moved into linguistics because he said, there's so much more still to find out here. And I think you'll pick that up from the courses. It's just a subject that's, opening wider and wider and becoming more and more central as language meets natural language technology. That's one example of things, but also as we become more and more aware of language differences as our societies become more linguistically complex.
So we have a question about whether the courses are structured that they can be studied around part-time or full-time work, pre-recorded or evening lectures. At the moment, yes, pretty much everything is pre-recorded, though our teaching across linguistics does tend to be very hands-on, and we love a sort of live experience together. So it's not necessarily the ideal way to do it. So we're not super equipped for the only solely online pre-recorded type of experience. But in general, we tend not to offer evening classes or weekend classes, that kind of thing, I'm afraid.
But part-time work, it's about how flexible your hours are, I suppose. There's absolutely no problem with studying linguistics part-time. It's just how participation goes in courses. So the course I'm teaching this semester, some students can only come to some of it. We're recording them all, they're on Zoom, but stuff that happens like just people typing in questions with chat as you're there, or each week, some student has responsibility for leading the questions, putting questions up, answering people's questions. If you're not there in real time, you miss out on all of that. Doesn't mean you miss out on everything, because the PowerPoints, the recordings, all of that is loaded up, but your learning is much less interactive, which makes it less satisfying. So it's about probably, in the ideal, you'd avoid things like that. But if there was a situation where you had to do one of your subjects like that because you wanted to do them and there was no other way around, it could be done.
And also, probably I can add that, in many courses, actually, attendance is not a part of assessment. So you don't really have to worry about, you need to attend, although participation, everything, involvement, and engagement with other people is a very important part of learning, as just Nick said. So, but when it comes to assessment, attendance is not part of it.
So I think we may have answered all the questions that currently that have come in. And I'm just going to post up my email address, and I would love to hear from you. So you see in chat my email address. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I am very happy to direct you to staff members that might be able to help you with your special interests. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us for a great session on linguistics, and we hope to see you here.
Bye.
Bye.